In lieu of a fancy opening, I'm just going to say it all out front. This is the Chapter 3 Discord server Cursed Conlang Circus submission for Year 3, and I think you guys will notice that I struggle with tones. Let's get to the rundown. The major decisions of Cajun were made by those members of my Discord server who wanted to help with the formation of the language. It was their guidance on features of it that guided us to what we have. So, what do we have? Cajun is a VSO order language that features tones, 3 noun cases, 10 verb tenses, and a fairly minimal phonemic inventory which has rules governing the vowel and consonant clusters, both of which are actually technically forbidden. The consonants are n, ch, th, j in the glottal stop, and the vowels e, u. Vowels can have high, mid, low, rising, or falling tones, and can be either short or long. In addition, any vowel that follows the palatal nasal is palatalized. Syllable structure is highly flexible with only a vowel necessary as the nucleus, but a consonant can exist as the onset or the coda. If a word change would ever make 2 vowels come in contact, there are simple rules for handling it. If it's a double of the same vowel, lengthen it, and the tone is a mix of the 2 combined. So if both tones are mid, the long vowel is also mid. If the first is higher than the second, it becomes a falling tone, and if the first is lower than the second, it becomes a rising tone. If there is any situation in which a high tone would have to become a rising tone, it instead becomes a falling tone, and vice versa for low tones becoming rising tones. Consonants have some rules to them too. Th is only allowed as a word final coda. If a word change would cause it to appear within a word, it shifts to j instead. The glottal stop is allowed between vowels, but never in a word initial or final position. Consonants are not allowed to cluster or geminate. Instead, geminates are shortened to a single consonant. Ch next to any other consonant becomes the glottal stop. If either of the nasals are placed next to each other, the second is dropped. Similarly, if j appears prior to either nasal, the nasal drops. Firmly impressed with that upon our livers, let's move on to grammar. Nouns have no class, but fall into cases, namely the nominative, accusative, and genitive. Each is reflected in changes occurring on the final syllable of the word, and all include dropping the coda. Nouns that are not in the nominative or accusative cases, but which are genitives, are conjugated like normal, but nouns that are nominative or accusative, as well as genitive, are conjugated for possessiveness first, and then the other case. Plurals are formed by prefixing n onto the noun. If the noun begins with a non-e vowel, the glottal stop is placed on the end of the plural prefix. If a noun begins with an e, normal rules apply for vowel lengthening. Noun negation is simple. The ultimate vowel shifts to and e is suffixed, following any rules for word changes. An example of this would be the sentence, I am not a crab, which more closely translates to, I am crab not. Well, technically it's more like mine crab not, but we'll get to that later. Same with verb negation. Pronouns are likewise simple. You have the first and second person singular and plural forms, in which the first person plural follows the rules for pluralization, and the second person singular follows the rules for noun negation. Now might be a good time to mention that nouns are all based on the first person singular. Either you are me or you are not. But what about the third person, you may ask? Well, you shouldn't have, but I won't blame you. The third person singular uses the first person plural, and the third person plural uses the second person singular. Definitives are placed on all non-proper nouns. So cat and not me receive a definitive, but names do not. Interestingly, nouns that are part of a proper name, such as the Empire State Building, do not receive a definitive. The full proper name is exempt as well. Verbs basically exist in their infinitive form, with some morphological changes based on arbitrary classes organized by ending. All verbs end in either th or ch, and verbs ending in ch always have e or e as the final vowel in the infinitive form. Verbs only inflect for the cessative or habitual aspects. These changes are shown on screen. Verb tense is carried on an auxiliary word that precedes the verb itself. Each auxiliary combines either the word old or new with one of the following. It is also important to note that the old year is known as the storytelling construction, as most retellings tend to occur with that tense. Verb negation is probably the easiest set of rules of the entire language. The first vowel of the infinitive becomes a falling tone. If it is already a falling tone, it lengthens. If it is already long, it changes to eh. And if it is already eh, it changes to a. Adjectives and adverbs are straightforward as well. Both start with a simple particle, ne, and follow a simple formula. Additionally, each modifying word receives the particle. Even simpler rules govern the particle's usage depending on if the modified word is a noun or a verb. Cajun uses impositions for any clauses that we would typically use prepositions with, wherein the imposition is placed between the first word and the second, or if there is only one non-imposition word immediately preceding it. This also needs to take into account adverbs and adjectives. If the only words that exist within the adpositional phrase is a noun and a modifier, or a verb and a modifier, place it before the modified word. Cajun is a linguistic nightmare when you refer to numbers. Each number exists by itself but cannot be expressed alone. Either it always takes the form of the number and the word finger based upon the counting system, or as an ordinal number whereby you remove the suffix meaning finger and add the ordinal marker, ne. So with all the boring stuff out of the way, let's get to the fun part. Nunanja, ne ke ku enu, un ne. Jeneth nu nan ejeu nu eje neth nu nen je chene eu nech ne che ech che eu chu neth nu nang ith nu j ne che a. Thank you to everyone in the Discord, both in the server and behind the scenes. Without your help, this would not have been done quite so amazingly. Thank you, everyone who has taken the time to watch it with us today. I can't tell you how amazing each and every one of you are. Agma, you sly bastard, keep making us hurt ourselves.